Hello, and welcome to this special interview by Judicial Watch. I'm your host, Jerry Dunleavy, and today we're going to be discussing the so-called Awan brothers scandal, a House IT and cybersecurity scandal involving Imran Awan and his family, overlooked by the mainstream media, but there's been a lot of incredible, dogged reporting being done by my guest today, the Daily Caller News Foundation's Luke Rosiak. So thank you very much for joining me today, Luke.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a very interesting, very complicated story, cybersecurity scandal, IT scandal happening within the Democratic side of the House of Representatives. And if you could, for me, start kind of with the basics for our viewers here and let people know what this scandal is really all about and how it got started.
So it's really almost two separate scandals. The first is that the House of Representatives was hacked during the 2016 election by these Pakistanis. And they have really a terrible background. They've been repeatedly accused of extortion-like behaviors by others in the past. They really seem like just ruthless people that had access to all the emails of 1 in 5 House members. And they were aggregating all those emails onto one server and then funneling data off the network. So that obviously puts national security at risk. We don't know the full extent of what they were doing with all this data, but they have connection to some foreign entities. And probably the biggest risk is really blackmail of members. But then probably the more interesting one that we're really still unraveling and just absolutely blows me away is the cover-up of this scandal. So when Democrats realized that they had been hacked, instead of acting on it, instead of having these guys tossed in jail, their instinct was to hide it. Basically, they learned about this hack in July of 2016, which is the same month that the DNC started publishing, that the WikiLeaks started publishing the DNC emails. So if these guys were to have been arrested at that time, you got to put yourself back in the mindset of where we were at in that heated run-up to the 2016 election, and the DNC thing is still just happening, and that narrative of Russia, the Democrats are only then just deciding that they want to start forming this Russian narrative, and they're hiring Fusion GPS, and all that stuff is going on. So at that critical moment, there's the discovery by the House Inspector General that these guys hacked Congress. And they make the astonishing decision to leave them on the network and not do anything about it. Because if they would have arrested them, it would have hit the media. And then they're trying to create this Russian narrative, but then you've also got to explain that there's a simultaneous, very similar hack by Pakistanis that they hired and failed to vet. It would have undoubtedly mixed together in the public consciousness. People would have been asking questions, is it the same thing? Did the Pakistanis hack the DNC too? And suddenly, instead of getting sympathy for the Russia thing, it starts seeming like the Democrats are kind of negligent because here they are getting hacked again and again. Hillary's got her server in a bathroom and John Podesta's email password is password. And then they hire these guys who had criminal records and no IT training and let them put their whole family on the network without doing any background checks. So really, this was a cover-up that had the potential to change the 2016 election, which is exactly why they worked so hard to cover it up. If this would have come out, I think it would have been an October surprise that would have helped Donald Trump win. And it's easy to think now, of course, he won anyway, but at that time, no one thought Trump was going to win unless something crazy happened, some big story broke. This had the potential to be that story, and Democrats were working overtime to cover it up. We're only now learning, like 2 years later, the full extent of it. And so this was an attempt to rig the 2016 election, I think. It's one of the most successful ways that they did this, because most people still haven't heard about it. And I think it disproves a lot of the things that the Democrats have been saying since about how they really hate hacking, they hate foreign meddling, collusion. All these things, during the whole time that they were going on and on about Russia, they knew that these Pakistani guys were on the network and that they were hacking. And their reaction to that was, it was casual. It was a cover-up. They didn't want to do anything about it. So it reveals a lot of hypocrisy. And when Donald Trump tweeted this week about how the Democratic IT scandal reveals a lot of things about the corruption that we've seen again and again. That's what he meant, is it's kind of like running parallel to the Russia probe. You have this Pakistani hack that was dealt with in a very different way. Instead of making this whole big campaign aimed at villainizing the president, you had a cover up and you had them protecting these guys. And now, kind of in phase 2 here in 2018, the cover-up continues with the deep state, FBI, and the DOJ. And so these guys still haven't been arrested other than for pretextual crimes. And they did stuff that was undoubtedly criminal. So what we're seeing right now is even under Jeff Sessions' Justice Department, these guys are kind of being protected in a way that can only be explained by politics.
So we've got the crime, as you said, and then we've got sort of an ongoing cover-up. So before we dive into more detail on the sort of where we are now and the ongoing cover-up, let's talk a little bit more about the crime itself. Give me a little bit more detail on Imran Awan and the Awan brothers. I mean, what is it that made these guys such kind of shady characters? I know that there's some foreign connections, there's lawsuits against them. I mean, go into some detail and really, try to explain what made it such a bad idea in the first place to have them in charge of all of this information and be in charge of the IT and emails and that sort of thing at the house.
So like 14 years ago, Debbie Wasserman Shultz and a couple other members from Florida put this guy Imran Awan on their payroll when he had just come over to Pakistan, and I think he got dual citizenship that same year. And they started paying him as much as a member of Congress makes, which is very unusual for an IT guy. You're not allowed to make any more than a member if you're a staffer. So right after that, his relative would join the payroll. And then when that person was making as much as a congressman, the next one would. And that pattern repeated 7 times in what clearly seems to be an evasion of the House rules, an attempt to pay millions of dollars to this family. Which is obviously not what any of the other IT guys are making. There's a lot of indications that all these other relatives weren't really working there. So they call it a ghost employee scheme, mm-hmm. And this is something that even there's a member of Congress in prison right now, a former member of Congress, Corrine Brown of Florida. She was paying staffers who weren't really working there, and then the money would route back to her. So this has, from the beginning, all the hallmarks of a scheme, whether the money is all going to Imran and not his relatives, or whether some of that money is ultimately going to chiefs of staff or maybe even congressmen. But the relationship was always very, very odd with these guys. Most of the relatives had no IT training. A lot of them some of them never went to college. One of them was a 20-year-old college student. Well, he was making $165,000. One of them was like running a car dealership. Some of them spent months of every year in Pakistan. And then one of them was actually fired from McDonald's, was his most recent job experience. And so the Democrats gave these guys the keys to the kingdom, the passwords to all their servers and all their emails for 10 years. So that's something that is really surprising that doesn't get more attention when you talk about hacking in Russia and they're so mad about hacking. It's like, you guys were so negligent for so long, but is it negligence or is it something worse? Why were they so aligned with these guys? Why were they protecting them from the beginning? So that went on for many years. And these guys are pretty prolific con men. They were doing a number of different scams at once. So you have the potential ghost thing we just mentioned, ghost employees. But then they were also falsifying invoices that made it so that you could steal equipment from the house without anyone noticing. So every time they ordered, like a big fancy computer or something, they would change the invoices so that it went into this petty cash slush fund and it wasn't tracked like it was supposed to be. So eventually the House authorities noticed that and began an investigation into theft. But then they realized, okay, these are IT guys. Usually if you're willing to break the rules in one way, you're probably willing to do bad things in another aspect too. So the investigation began as theft and quickly pivoted to cybersecurity. That's when they found that they were funneling data onto this one server, about 40 members of Congress's emails all on one server. They were also logging in as members of Congress, which is very unusual. And they were doing it in a way that was designed to cover up what they were doing, to manipulate the server logs so that they didn't really see these people sneaking in. and then they were funneling data off the network. They were logging into servers that they didn't have any reason to be accessing. So, you know, it's hacking, but then again, they were IT guys, so they were allowed to access certain servers, but then they were going out and they were accessing other servers that they shouldn't have been on, and they were taking data off the network. So the IG writes a report that was never publicly released, but the House leaders all were briefed on it and reacted to it, but not really with the urgent action that you would expect for hacking. So they actually let them stay on the network for a couple months. And the IG report actually pointed out that one server in particular was kind of the main one that they were hacking. And coincidentally enough, it was the sister group of the DNC. It was the House Democratic Caucus. So that's a group that's pretty similar in mission to the DNC, and it was, the chairman was Xavier Becerra. Now he's Attorney General of California. So this was the key server in this IG report, the House Democratic Caucus server. So what happened next will blow your mind. The server was stolen right after it was named as being key evidence in this criminal hacking case. So the server's got all the data of all these members, and it helps prove that they hacked Congress. And the cops are, you know, closing in, and then the server disappears. And no one said anything. Xavier Becerra didn't tell anyone. They weren't up in arms about it. Server just walking out of Congress. And the Democrats don't care. The Democrats aren't mad. They cover it up. At that point, it should have been obvious that if it wasn't already, that what the IG found in terms of what they were doing with these servers was downright nefarious. These are not friendly guys. These are bad dudes. To steal a server like that. So the Democrats still didn't arrest them. And they waited and waited and waited. And then just a few days after Trump's inauguration in February of 2017, they finally kicked them off the network. And they acted like the whole thing was about theft. And remember, technically that's kind of true. It started as theft way back, but the investigators were all focused on cybersecurity. This was clearly, it's almost like, yeah, they were stealing, but who even cares when you're hacking too? Forget the theft. And so this was kind of the PR manipulation of the Democrats are very good at messaging, and they knew that, again, we come back to how this hacking thing really would have complicated the Russian narrative, and it would have, basically it gets even worse because when they decided to cover that up in 2016, they can never have this guy be busted for hacking because then people are going to say, why did you sit on your hands for 6 months during the election? Which is really like basically what the Democrats seem to have done here is decide to trade national security for the chance to win an election. They were willing to put our nation at harm and to knowingly allow our nation to be hacked so that they could have a better chance of winning in 2016. So, you know, you can almost say it's like practically treasonous behavior. I mean, this is a big deal, and the Democrats can't let this come out. So that's why we've seen, even though there's all this evidence gathered by the Inspector General and eventually by the Capitol Police and others, he's still only been charged with trying to like move all this money overseas and flee the country. But a series of really, really sketchy things happened. After the IG report came out, the server disappeared. Finally, after the inauguration, they get banned from the network. Wasserman Shultz still won't fire him. He comes into the building at midnight, takes her laptop, and leaves it in a phone booth. And the Capitol, with notes that, you know, have the effect of causing the Capitol Police to realize it's tied to him, and they seize the laptop, and that's obviously like right out of a spy novel. I mean, what is he doing with Debbie Wasserman Shultz's laptop at midnight? And we know she doesn't want to see it. So then you get into this cover-up, and it's not just the suspects covering it up, it's the Democrats. Their interests are aligned because suspects obviously want to get away with it, but the Democrats also need them to not be charged with hacking because of, you know, the reputational harm that it would cause and what it would reveal about what they did in the 2016 election. So, you know, this laptop is still in the possession of prosecutors, and it's Wasserman Schultz's, and she wound up threatening the Capitol Police on video. You know, you got to give me back all the evidence in this case, and you know, you can see the emotion on her voice. So that insight, you can, you know, I like that video because you can see that how uncomfortable she is and how agitated, and people may not have heard about the Awan brothers issue before, but I can assure them that behind the scenes in the House of Representatives, this was considered to be a real threat to Hillary Clinton winning, and that's what caused this whole cover-up. And it was just like really frantic manipulations behind the scenes to make sure that no one learned about this hack.
So talk with me a little bit more about the reaction of House leadership and of Debbie Wasserman Shultz in particular as this investigation is speeding up, as Capitol Police are getting involved, the House IG is involved. What you're basically saying it's obviously not treated seriously. There's stonewalling, there's a cover-up, but you referenced there sort of an interaction that she has with the Capitol Police. Set the scene a little bit more with our viewers there about that sort of it coming to a head between Debbie Wasserman Shultz and the Capitol Police on this issue.
So Debbie Wasserman Shultz is on the Legislative Branch Appropriations Committee. So she controls the budget for all the things for the House of Representatives itself, like the Capitol Police and these other offices, these behind-the-scenes bureaucracies in Congress. So she appears to have used her position to try to threaten to cut funding for the police if they didn't drop this case. At the same time that she was doing that, she hired a lawyer to block prosecutors from seeing evidence in this case, which of course, in the DNC hack, she refused to let prosecutors see the server. Which didn't really make any sense, because if you're so mad at Russia for hacking, then you should want them to go to jail, and if you don't give the prosecutors the evidence, obviously you can't convict someone. So we see a similar pattern with the Awan. She didn't want anyone to see the evidence that could help punish this hacker, which is totally, it doesn't mesh at all with the fact that she had just been hacked at the DNC. She should have known the importance of hacking by then, of all people. And her instinct was to lash out, and she accused the police of trying to frame him out of Islamophobia. And then there was a lot of other cover-up efforts that occurred behind the scenes. So there's the House's chief administrative officer, is kind of the bean counter who's in charge of all the back office stuff in the House. And according to multiple sources, she cornered him, screamed at him in this profane tirade, called him an effing Islamophobe. You will drop this investigation right now. You won't so much as take away their parking spots. And she talked about how close she was with Imran. She invited him to her daughter's bat mitzvah. All this stuff, just screaming at him, make it go away. So this is sort of a, there was a lot of efforts to make sure that no one found out about this hack. There was a hearing just recently where they talked about how the Democrats did basically no supervision of their IT guys at all. They had no idea what they were doing. They had access to everything. And this same chief administrative officer guy was like, yeah, we couldn't make the members fire this guy. He was a bad dude. We all knew it. But they're congressmen, and we just didn't have the power to make them fire him. So Wasserman Shultz refused to fire her IT guy even after the Capitol Police said that he was banned from the network. So now you have an IT guy who's not allowed to touch a computer, and Wasserman Shultz said that he was working on, printers and websites, and I don't know what kind of a website isn't connected to the internet. It doesn't make any sense. So, Wasserman Shultz potentially allowed this guy, in circumvention of the police's orders, to continue to access the network, which would have absolutely placed her colleagues at harm. And you see the way that she acts in this case, you have to wonder if she's currently being blackmailed, because this is a dude who took her laptop and left it in a phone booth at midnight. I mean, he doesn't seem to treat her very well. Why would she go so far to protect him? And the more you learn about, and basically so they blocked the IG from investigating. And so the IG report came out, and it's pretty bad. And it says like data's flying off the network, but it kind of stops there. And so you might think, well, this must be no big deal because there's not a 300-page IG report about it. There's not a 300-page IG report because they blocked her. But what they found was so scary, you would have had to want to know more. And it's one of those cases where it was, negligent is probably the wrong word. It was willful. It was a willful desire not to know more during the election, that they knew that data was flying off the network by these bad dudes, and they said, well, we don't want to look at what that data is. So the IG was taken off the case, and it moved over to the Capitol Police, which was a decision made by Paul Ryan. And you asked about House leadership. I don't want to dance around the fact that Paul Ryan was in charge of the House. He had something to do with this, absolutely. He knew about it, and during October of 2016, he could have come out during the election and said, you know what? Russia aside, Pakistanis who the Democrats failed to vet hacked Congress. And I think that would have, number one, been the right thing to do in terms of national security and responding to an ongoing threat. Politically speaking, it would have really helped Donald Trump, because a lot of people were saying, he's talking about vetting Muslims and everything. And ironically, these guys, they do happen to be Muslim. They do happen to be unvetted because they exempted them from background checks. All 44 Democrats who they worked for didn't do background checks, despite the policy saying that they should have. So Paul Ryan was in possession of evidence during the 2016 election that would have really helped Donald Trump win. And he didn't play that card. He had that card up his sleeve and he never played it. So some of the issues that the Democrats likely pitched Paul Ryan on were like the separation of powers, and it's important to preserve our independence, which is all very much true under the Constitution. It's all important. But in this case, they were using it for their own. They were saying we shouldn't punish these hackers. I mean, basically, they tried to keep the FBI out. They tried to keep prosecutors out by saying the House is its own entity. What happens in the House stays in the House. So right now, here we are 2 years later. We know that the server logs in the House of Representatives show that it was hacked. We know that there are all these invoices that were falsified showing all this equipment that was disappearing from the House. These things are, the documentation kind of proves the misconduct right there. There's no ambiguity about it. It doesn't take 2 years to investigate that stuff. And that's a simple way to look at it, is 2 years later, the fact that no one's been charged despite those things, it's a cover-up. And the cover-up is, it ultimately comes down to, the 2016 election was hanging on the balance, and the Democrats decided to trade national security for political expediency.
So, I mean, it obviously sounds bad. Like you said, there's confirmation that data is being taken when it shouldn't be. It's being put onto a server that it shouldn't be, and then the server disappears. I mean, this is obviously a pretty big deal. But like you said, the IG report doesn't go as far as we would need it to go to get the full picture on what would happen, which we don't fully know yet. Now, you have actually done some pretty good reporting, though, on the background of Imran Awan and some of the others in his family that, at least circumstantially would suggest that in other aspects of their lives, these are people that are up to no good. So can you walk us through just a little bit about some of your more recent reporting on what you've learned about their backgrounds, their business history, their foreign connections, and that sort of thing?
That's a good question, and one of the most interesting things here is because the IG was blocked from investigating, I wound up finding out more about these guys than the FBI did, which is, we should not be in that position. And a lot of people think, well, obviously the CIA is involved behind the scenes, doing all this secret stuff. There's no indication anything really happened when these guys were busted hacking Congress. I, as an investigative reporter, wound up doing a lot of the work. And what I found every step of the way confirmed the idea that these guys, when they had access to 1 in 5, all the emails and files of 1 in 5 Democratic congressmen, and then this data was flying off the network, that they were up to no good with it. These guys have been accused of extortion-like behaviors by so many people they know. They've been involved in a lot of really suspicious financial behaviors. They owned like 7 houses, and they would rent them out to people, but they would collect rent only in cash. And these tenants would say that they would just basically extort me. One of the ladies said, he came to her and said, I'm going to sue you because you don't have flowers in your garden, and you should have flowers in your garden. She said, it's January. And he said, well, give me $300 or else I'm going to sue you. So it's just like this unhinged behavior, this quest for money that he will do anything to get it. And that's kind of a funny little example. But the other examples are really frightening. So this guy had 2 wives under Sharia law. And he lived in Virginia. He was supposedly an Americanized dude, came over when he was 17 years old. He had 2 Sharia law wives in Virginia that he took. And then he also had a stepmom. So all 3 of these women said that he made death threats against them. The stepmom said she was being held in captivity by him, wiretapped, and extorted. Obviously, most of us go through life without being accused of wiretapping by our own mom. And so when you have your own stepmom saying wiretapping, and then you've got data, independently data flying off the network from Congress, My God. And then both of these wives said that he was controlling them with threats. One of the wives was also his own cousin and worked for Debbie Wasserman Shultz. And these are like, Me Too, these congresswomen that are like sexual harassment. They are protecting Imran Awan in such a suspicious manner that even though you have like 3 or 4 women that have accused Imran Awan of just like treating them as their property, they won't condemn it in any way. So you've got one of my recent stories is the second wife, the Sharia law wife. She called the police and said she was being kept as a slave by Imran Awan at the exact same time that the Capitol Police were supposed to have been watching him. This is after he was caught hacking Congress. And they were supposedly like kind of waiting to make their move and deciding. And there were so many signs that should have made the Capitol Police say, my God, we can't wait. We got to go in and bust this guy. We got to get the FBI in on this. So the woman says she's being kept as a slave. The police don't do anything. She flees back to Pakistan for safety. Next thing you know, a couple days later, someone shoots at her through her house. So this is like retaliation. I don't want to say Imran Awan did it because the police report over in Pakistan says that the shooting was unsolved. But this is days after she's been fighting with Imran and calls the cops on him, like attempted murder, basically. So what we've seen is a pattern of retaliation, witness intimidation, and evidence tampering in this case. And that helps explain why 2 years into this, you've got some people who haven't followed this very closely saying, it's about bank fraud. No, of course it's not about bank fraud, and that's abundantly clear if you follow it closely. But the cover-up is Democrats manipulate the DOJ in order to manipulate the media. Okay, the media is so important to them because that's what voters respond to. It controls the narrative. Remember what they did with Fusion GPS. The reason that they hired, so they want everyone to start talking about Trump and Russia, right? They take this dossier and they shop it around to the media. The media won't touch it. And that's their goal, is to get the media to do it. That's why they funneled the dossier to the FBI. So then they could go back to the media and say, well, now you can write a story saying the FBI is working on this Trump-Russia thing. That's how it all began. At the same time, you have kind of the inverse going on in this case. The Democrats manipulated the Justice Department so that they never charged this guy, despite obvious crimes, except for something minor. They arrested him at the airport because they didn't want him to flee, booked him on pretextual charges of mortgage fraud, and now you've got the Washington Post saying this case is about mortgage fraud. So you control the media by controlling the DOJ. And at the end of the day, this case isn't about the Awans, it's about the Democrats and how they covered up this hack on Congress. But the more I've talked to so many people who know these guys, and they say there isn't anything they wouldn't do for money. They would sell their own mom for money. And actually, after their real mom died in Pakistan, they allegedly were extorting and harassing and shaking down people over in Pakistan to try to get money from her business partners. I mean, literally, like when their own family dies, that's what they have on their mind is how can we get money? The stepmom, who said that she was being held in captivity, she talked to the FBI about this case. And what happened after that is they appear to have hacked her emails and found out that she talked to the FBI. So then they went to her and they threatened her for that. So here we are, the FBI is kind of turning a blind eye to this continuing misconduct in an effort to cover up this case. And we've got the witness intimidation. Imran Awan is still allegedly laundering money in the craziest of ways, even buying $40,000 gold bars, which again sounds like something out of a spy novel, I know. But that's like legit information. He's currently doing that, like as of like a month ago. And the FBI now, the DOJ, said that they're going to negotiate with him. So I think some people are like, well, obviously then he's like somehow flipping on congressmen, which is a reasonable thing to say, because if you hack Congress, obviously it doesn't just get made to go away. You got to, you're going to squeal, you're going to do something. That's not the case here. They're literally just trying to make it go away. And it's not an exchange for anything from Imran Awan. The idea is that if Imran Awan gets to get away with hacking Congress, then you can't you can't say that Democrats covered up a hack on Congress to win the 2016 election.
But if there's convictions on something like hacking, then it means that it was being covered up for a year.
Yeah, and it makes it, either way, that's what happened, but it makes it so that the lazy journalists at the New York Times and the Washington Post will have to write the story because it's as easy as reading a court document. The Democrats know that if journalists have to do anything harder than reading a single court document, they won't do it.
So I know that one of the concerns that I read about in your reporting, when it came to some of the foreign connections that it seemed like Imran Awan had, and these weren't really particularly normal foreign connections either. Actually, seemed a bit nefarious, and it seemed like it played into a bit of where your concern about this entire thing was coming from. So, talk to me a little bit about some of the foreign connections that Imran Awan seemed to have.
So the first thing I noticed is that he was running this car dealership while he was making $165,000 working for Congress. And the car dealership had basically fake employees listed on its website. The whole thing just seemed fake. And there was a lawsuit about it. And the business partner testified that sure enough, its books were all fake. It was kind of like just moving money around in sketchy ways. And that it took $100,000 from an Iraqi government minister who is a fugitive from the U.S. and who has been tied to Hezbollah. So this is while these guys are working for members of the intelligence committee as their IT guys, and they can read all those members' emails. You're taking $100,000 from Hezbollah through money laundering car dealership. They lied about the existence of this car dealership on their House ethics disclosures. They didn't want anyone to know it existed. That in itself is a crime. And so the idea that authorities haven't done anything about it. I mean, there are court documents where people swear under oath that they took this money from the Hezbollah guy. The ethics disclosures where you're supposed to say, do you have any conflicts of interest? Do you have any outside income? I mean, members of Congress have gone to jail for lying on that too. And these guys did that about the car dealership. So I've been working with a guy, really great reporter named Wajid Ali Saeed. He works for Pakistani TV network. So he's on the ground over in Pakistan doing reporting on these guys. So he talked to a ton of people who all said that Imran runs around Pakistan where he spends months out of every year. And he tells people, I'm so important because of my job in Congress. I can change the president. I have such influence. I'm so powerful. I can, order hits on people. I can have people kidnapped. Basically, and it's kind of comical in one sense because really he's supposed to be this geek that just fixes, plugs in your mouse. So whether it's all bluster or whether this purported influence stems from blackmailing congressmen, it's really quite alarming. So how did he get this protection by these armed government agents? I mean, it's like he's being protected by Pakistani intelligence services. I mean, these guys have machine guns and they escort him everywhere he goes. So we have one source who is his former business partner over there who says that he was giving USBs of data to Pakistani intelligence. When you consider it in the totality of everything else we know, I mean, it seems pretty likely it's just the one source. I don't have the ability to confirm that any further because I'm not the CIA. But unfortunately, the CIA has not done any research on this case. I mean, there's a quote in the Washington Post where the Democrats claim that the FBI told them that these guys have no connection to foreign governments. And I think that is the FBI's position. They haven't even done basic research. I mean, there's lawsuits tying them to. Their lawyer has admitted that they were sending money over to a police officer. And then I have a relative of theirs who says that they were sending equipment, house equipment, like iPads and laptops and stuff, over to Pakistani government ministers. And he told me that even before I got the IG report that showed that identical equipment was gone missing from the house. So, there's every reason to think that these guys were stealing house equipment and mailing it directly to Pakistani officials. And they had access to the emails of 1 in 5 congressmen. No one seems to be doing anything about it. The intelligence services have not been activated to thoroughly investigate this case. The mission here seems to be ask no questions so that you can tell people that you're not aware of any wrongdoing. So it's a lot of people just kind of covering their eyes and plugging their ears.
So witness testimony and on-the-ground reporting about equipment and money being sent from the United States to Pakistan, on top of court documents about a sort of fake car dealership that has money tied to foreign nationals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, taking money from an Iraqi government minister while you're running IT for Intelligence Committee members, and then perjuring yourself by hiding it from the financial, the ethics disclosures. Clear violations of House rules. Paul Ryan's not doing anything about it. Nancy Pelosi's not doing anything about it.
So as we close out here, what do you want to see House leadership do? What do you want to see the DOJ do?
Well, there's a lot of evidence that the House has, the Inspector General, and clearly there have been crimes committed in the House of Representatives, and I think that Paul Ryan leaving the House is, it had to happen in this case, because he didn't really do a whole lot. He kind of let the Democrats run the show on this, but I think when the new leadership comes in, they'll probably say, well, that happened in the previous leadership. I don't know anything about it. So it's easier for everyone not to touch it. But at this point in time, the DOJ, this is going to blow up big time on the DOJ if they let this guy get away with it. This is Jeff Sessions' prosecutors who are going to let a Democratic guy from Pakistan get away with hacking Congress simply because the Democrats want them to. And Debbie Wasserman Shultz's brother is actually a prosecutor in this same office. He's tweeting about the case dismissively. Jeff Sessions just can't get control of these people. And so Donald Trump tweeted, you can't make a plea deal with this guy. And some people said, well, he shouldn't interfere in criminal cases. That's not what's going on here. What's going on is the other side is interfering in the criminal case. And Donald Trump is saying, well, if you hack Congress and everyone knows it in Congress, then you got to face those charges. So I think that they need to pursue these guys, and they need to investigate their backgrounds too. It shouldn't take 2 years. The reason they're saying they don't have any evidence is that they haven't looked. There is numerous charges that they could bring right now, and the fact that they haven't done that proves that this thing is rigged. So I think this is a case that looks really, really bad for Jeff Sessions' DOJ, and we're all kind of waiting for the big DOJ report about what happened in the 2016 election. It's supposed to come out next week. This is going to be kind of another thing where I think there's going to be a lot of review of how they handled this case if they make this go away. So, they may think that they're doing it to kind of, so it doesn't turn out to be some big explosive political thing, but it's going to backfire, and there's just no reason for the Republican DOJ under Jeff Sessions to do the dirty work of Democrats.
Well, Luke, I think that was all very interesting. I appreciate you going into some detail there. I know that you've been doing a lot of really good investigative reporting on this for a long time. And so I'm glad that you were able to share your insights here with us. And I highly encourage everybody to go ahead and to go and read all of his work at the Daily Caller, and follow you on Twitter at Luke Rosiak. Is that right? Be sure to go ahead and do that, because he's done a lot of great legwork on this when a lot of other people were ignoring the story. So thank you very much for talking with me today, Luke, and thank you all for joining us. Until next time, I'm Jerry Dunleavy for Judicial Watch.